Let's build a quick Node.js app with Postgres instead of MongoDB. It's going to look and feel very similar. In fact, we're going to use pretty much the same front end, our very beautiful, well-crafted, bare bones HTML. So again, just want to call out, you can access all the samples here. If you click on this, you can see here there's the PostgreSQL one. All of the code for what we're about to do is here. So if you don't want to write the code along with me, feel free to just copy it and take a look at it. So let's go back to our command line. I'm going to open a new terminal on my host computer. So I have a MongoDB sample here. I'm going to make a directory of PostgreSQL sample and cd into that, npm init -y. And we're going to say npm install express 4.17.1, and then we're also going to install pg, which is the name of the driver for Postgres, at 8.4.1. Now again, you can use an ORM for Postgres. Like there's connects, there's a couple of them. I don't use them, so I don't know, but you feel free to use an ORM. We're just going to query Postgres directly. So install that, it should go pretty fast. Make a directory of static. I'm just going to copy from the MongoDB sample static index.html, and I'm going to put that into my static directory. Because we're going to be using literally the same front end. We're just going to change some strings. And then you can go ahead and touch server.js as well. And then we'll open code to this. So here in this index.html, this is, instead of being a MongoDB app, this is going to be a Postgres app. And instead of being the search here, we're going to put this as board ID. And other than that, this is going to work exactly the same. It's going to call a get. That's going to put a search.value in there, and then it's going to return to us whatever the database or whatever the API returns, which is what we're going to grab out of the database. So save that. And here we go. Let's go open our server.js. We say const express equals require express, and const pool, capital P, with the curly braces around it, equals require PG. So what is pool? Pool, oh, you know what I'm going to do for this whole project as well? I use Prettier a lot just to keep everything really prim and clean. So I'm going to create a new file here called .prettier rc. Yes. Put an empty object here, and now whenever I save these things, it's going to fix them. The extension you need for that, if you want to do it, is Prettier. This one, code formatter, and then just do format on save. Okay, so if you see my code rearranging and looking neater for you, that's why. Otherwise, it ends up looking a little gross. So let's talk about pool for just a second. Whereas MongoDB was kind of managing all of our connections for us, with Postgres, the way that it does is it creates a bunch of connections from your server to Postgres, and then it reuses them. So as soon as you say connect this, it'll give you actually an old connection so that you can be instantly connected. And that way, in the process of reusing them, one, you don't overwhelm your Postgres server with a bunch of open and closed connections. And two, your connections will end up being faster because it doesn't actually have to do the handshake again. It's actually already still connected to Postgres. So that's what a pool is. It's a pool of connections, hence why the term pool comes from. So we're going to say const pool equals new pool. and we're going to give it a connection string. And our connection string is going to look like this. PostgreSQL : Postgres, which is the name of our user. We didn't change it, so by default the username is Postgres. Colon, whatever you called your secret password. I called mine my secret password. So if you just followed along with me, just go with my secret password. At localhost : 532, which is the port that we're on. And then you want to connect to a specific database, which is going to be message boards. So this needs to be the name of whatever you have. Where's my, here, right? This is the name of the database. For some of you, if you didn't change it, it might say Postgres here. If you see Postgres here, then put Postgres here, right? That's the name of the database that you've been writing to. If you see message boards here, then put message boards there. It's just important that those things match up because it's going to connect to a specific database. Okay, so that's our connection string. Again, this is something that you would use some sort of like secret manager, like Key Vault, to deal with. And then we're going to have an async init function. Init. And then immediately after we define init, we're going to call it. So const app equals express. And then we're going to say app.get. We're going to define a route called /get. Define a function to deal with this, rec and res. Okay, const client equals await pool.connect. So this is how we're going to get a client back from the pool. We're going to say, hey, pool, connect me. If it has one to give to you, it's just like, all right, here you go, here's a client. If it doesn't have one available for you, it'll make a new connection and then hand you that back. So that's why we have to wait for it to give us back a connection. Let's say we want to give it a query where we want to get the data back for a board, right? So if someone goes to board 39, we want to know that it's called the coffee board, for example, and we want to know the description of the coffee board. And then we also want to know all of the comments that are on the coffee board. So we're going to actually do two queries, right? We're going to do one to get the data for the board and one to get the data for the comments. We could accomplish this in one query if we did an inner join, but that would mean that we'd be sending back a lot of copies of all of the various different board data. We don't want to do that. Let's just make this two queries. That would be more effective. So I'm going to say client. Let's do it this way. We're going to do two queries at once. We're going to do one that gets back comment response and board response. Okay, and then we're going to do equals await promise.all. Promise.all takes in multiple promises and then won't finish until everything finishes. In this particular case, we want to send two queries at the same time. One for each of those things that we were going to query for. So for the first one, we're going to say client.query. Here we go. Select star from comments, natural, left join, rich content, right? Because if we want to get all the rich content for those comments, where board ID equals $1. Okay. Then afterwards, we're going to provide a array. So rec.query.search. So let's talk about this for a second. this is saying wherever the $1 is, replace that in here. So the rec.query.search is going to be put here. Why are we doing that? This is called parameterized queries. The reason why we're doing this is if we put this directly in there, we're going to have a huge problem with what's called SQL injection. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second, but for now, just follow along with my lead right there. Put in our second query here, client.query. Select star from boards where board ID equals $1. Same thing here, put the parameterized query there as well. Okay, so now we're going to have two responses here. We're going to have one for the board, one for the comment. Oh, wait, this is supposed to be inside of here. So I just moved this highlighted block inside of the app.get. So every time that app.get gets called, this is what we want to call. I was accidentally doing outside of it. So again, all of that's inside. I just copied and pasted that inside of the app.get here. Now, all we need to do is send this back to the client with a res.json, and we're going to give back the status OK. We're going to give back the board with board res.rows 0, right? Because we either want to give it back the one board response that we're going to get, because there's going to be exactly one board, or nothing. Right? If someone gives something that's out of bounds, we just want to give them back nothing. And then here, where we want to say posts, we just want to return comments res.rows here. Or we can give them back an empty array. This actually will never be an empty array. This will always, or sorry, it will never be undefined. It'll always be an empty array. So this is actually superfluous. We can just put that, and that'll work just the same. Okay, so now outside of this app.get, so outside of this one here, I'm going to say const port equals 3000. App.use, same kind of thing we did last time, express.static /static app.listen on port, and console.log running on http://localhost : port, like that. All right. So here we go. Let's see if this works. I'm going to open my terminal here, and I'm just going to say node server.js. It's running on port 3000. You get a nice little front end here. Put in number 39, click search, and this should have returned already. So what happened? Here we can see it's not working. Where'd my code go? Here. So I'm getting an unhandled promise error. Comments res is not defined. Comment res, and I put comments res. So yeah, I called this comment res and this comment res. You just got to make sure that they're called the same variable name. So I'll stop and start my server again. It doesn't automatically refresh your code, so you have to stop and start it every single time. And let's go back towards my Firefox, refresh the page, search, and there we go. So you can see we get status OK. Board, this is the board information. It's the coffee board. It's got a board description. And you can see here are all the comments. And you can see here some of these have polls attached to them. Some of them have YouTube videos, all sorts of fun stuff. One of the things I'll throw out here is that I did the write join on, or the join on rich content. You'll notice that some of these, let's see if I can show you one of them. Yeah, comment ID 351, 351. This thing had two different rich content associated with it. So it actually returns this twice, right? Because it's doing that join. In my code, I'd have to go through and deduplicate this down into one thing or aggregate them in some particular way. You could do some sort of like group by. That would be possible as well. I just didn't do that. Right now, just in your code, you would have to handle two different comment IDs coming back with both different kinds of rich content.